Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases.
Yeah, and before we jump right into the deep dive today, we should mention that the language concepts we're exploring actually come directly from a SpeakDuo lesson.
Right, so if you're, an advanced learner looking to really elevate your language skills, you can go to SpeakDuo.com. You get to meet new people from around the world who are practicing English on video calls to become more confident with their English speaking ability.
Exactly, it's a really great resource. So, should we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it. So, have you ever used a perfectly correct English word in a high-stakes meeting?
Oh,
Only to realize, just by the look on your manager's face, that you conveyed the completely wrong emotion.
oh, absolutely. It's a terrible feeling.
It really is. Today, we're looking at that razor-thin line between speaking accurate English and speaking powerful English. Because if you want to command a room, whether you're navigating a tense corporate environment or sitting down for your IELTS Speaking Part 2 exam, you know the difference between a good speaker and a great speaker is nuance.
Yeah, it's not just about having a massive dictionary in your head, right?
Yeah.
It's about choosing the exact phrase to control the narrative.
Exactly. So we're looking at a highly specific set of idioms and phrasal verbs today. These aren't the, dry, standard vocabulary words you just memorize from a textbook.
No, not at all. These are the tools native speakers use to navigate complex emotional and professional landmines. They carry heavy psychological weight, they dictate the tone of a conversation, and in some cases, they're just dripping with sarcasm.
Right, the sarcasm is key. So I want to frame this entirely around a scenario that I think you, the listener, have probably lived through at least once. Let's imagine a massive, escalating corporate disaster.
Oh, I've been there.
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
So it starts with sheer, exhausting effort. It's a Friday afternoon, a project is failing, and management decides the whole team just needs to work harder. The phrase that usually gets thrown around here is, put your back in.
Right, put your back in.
Now, my instinct as a manager would normally be to tell my team, you really need to put your mind to this. How does put your back in change that expectation?
Well, it completely changed the expectation from cognitive endurance to just sheer brute force. When you tell someone to put their mind to it, you're asking for focus, strategy, mental clarity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But to put your back in has this purely physical kind of blue-collar origin. It traditionally refers to exerting intense, literal physical effort to move something incredibly heavy.
So like moving furniture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to maneuver an old, solid wood piano or a cast iron radiator up 3 flights of stairs. You can't just use your arms. You have to use your core, your legs, your spine.
Huh.
You literally put your entire structural weight into the effort.
Wow. Okay, so it implies a level of bodily exhaustion. But, in a modern corporate context, nobody's moving pianos. Well, maybe the office managers are. But if we're just talking about a software launch, it feels kind of strange to use such a physical idiom.
It is a bit strange, but that contrast is exactly what gives it impact. It can still be used quite literally in certain jobs. If you're physically reorganizing an office space, you might say, moving that heavy industrial safe upstairs required everyone to truly put their backs in.
Right, of course.
But when we use it metaphorically for knowledge work, it means applying extreme elbow grease or just intense punishing labor to a task. It tells your team that this isn't about being smart anymore. It's about just grinding through the work until it's done.
Okay, so we've put our backs in. We worked all weekend. But Monday morning hits, and the software launch is still a total mess. The project simply isn't moving.
Naturally.
Yeah. Now I have to go to the CEO and explain the situation. My default safe English response would just be, we are delayed.
Mm-hmm.
But our next phrase is, be bogged down. To me, delayed sounds safe. Why would I want to tell the CEO we are bogged down?
Because saying you're delayed makes it sound like it might actually be your fault. Delayed is an entirely neutral scheduling term. The train is delayed, the flight is delayed. It just simply means you're late on a timeline.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but bogged down paints a highly specific, vivid, and somewhat terrifying picture. A bog is a literal swamp. It's a patch of treacherous, muddy, sinking ground.
Right, like quicksand almost.
Exactly. When a heavy vehicle drives into wetlands, it gets physically bogged down in the mud. The tires spin, but it only sinks deeper.
Ah, I see the psychology there. If I say we're delayed, the CEO asks, well, why didn't you manage your time better?
Right.
But if I say we're bogged down, I'm painting us as victims of a hostile environment. We are trapped in a swamp.
Precisely. When you use this figuratively in a professional setting, you're describing sinking into a swamp of endless minor details. You aren't just late, you are completely trapped by the environment itself.
That is a phenomenal defense mechanism.
Hmm.
So if the CEO demands to know why the launch failed, I wouldn't just say we're behind schedule. I would say our core quality assurance department has become severely bogged down in endless minor spreadsheet details.
Perfect. It explains the why and shifts the blame to the sheer volume of the microtasks. And it evokes sympathy, or at least understanding, from leadership because everyone intuitively understands the frustration of being stuck in the mud just spinning your wheels.
But eventually, spinning your wheels isn't enough.
Right.
The situation is broken, and it demands a radical fix. Which brings us to our third phrase, which is cry out for.
Yes, a great one.
The definition here is to desperately need or demand something. I have to admit, I struggle with this one a bit. Like, if a database is broken, I would just say, we require a new system. Saying the database cries out for a new system feels, I don't know, a bit melodramatic for a Tuesday morning staff meeting.
Well, the melodrama is the entire point. When you say a situation cries out for something, you're employing anthropomorphism.
Okay, big word there.
Yeah, you're giving human emotion, suffering, and desperation to an inanimate object or an abstract workflow. Saying, we require an upgrade, is sterile, it's flat, and it's super easily ignored by a finance department holding the budget.
Right, they hear that all the time.
Exactly. But saying the system cries out for an upgrade gives the problem a voice of agony. It makes the need feel urgent, emotive, and undeniable.
I hadn't thought about it as a persuasive tool.
Yeah.
So for an advanced English learner, say someone's sitting in an IELTS Part 2 exam where they have to describe a problem at their university or workplace, this is a golden phrase to show off their command of tone.
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of a flat, we need a new system, they could elevate the narrative by saying, our outdated manual teacher scheduling system genuinely cries out for complete digital automation.
That is a perfect IELTS example. It signals to the examiner that you don't just understand basic vocabulary. You understand how to manipulate the emotional temperature of the room. You're demonstrating native-level persuasive rhetoric.
All right, let's keep our disaster story going. The system is crying out for automation. So management decides we need a completely new strategy. This requires planning. The phrase here is draw something up, meaning to prepare a formal plan, document, or schedule in writing.
Right.
But I'm a notorious note-taker. I write things down all day. Why can't I just say, management wrote down a new plan?
I mean, you certainly could, but again, you lose the professional weight. You write down a grocery list on a sticky note. You write down a phone number on the back of a receipt.
So it's too casual.
Yeah, exactly. Writing down is a solitary, casual act of transcription. But when you draw up something, it implies architecture. Think of an architect drawing up a blueprint or a lawyer drawing up a contract.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Yeah, it requires structure, formality, and usually a consensus among multiple people.
That makes a lot of sense. So write down is a sticky note, and draw up is a blueprint. It elevates the action to something official. So if I'm talking about my colleagues, I wouldn't say they wrote down some rules. I'd say the operational management team scheduled an afternoon session to draw up the new translation guidelines.
Yes. It signals to everyone in the company that this isn't just a casual suggestion. It is a finalized, formal framework that everyone will be expected to follow.
Right.
But as we know from corporate life, just because a plan is formally drawn up does not mean it's a good plan.
Oh, absolutely not. Sometimes those formal plans are the ones that completely destroy the company. And when a terrible plan is executed and you want to point out exactly whose terrible idea it was, you might use our next phrase, in your wisdom.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, the definition here is that it's a sarcastic phrase used to comment on someone's poor or surprising decision. Now, sarcasm in a second language is terrifying, honestly.
It really is. It's so hard to land.
The line between being funny and being deeply offensive is so thin. If I say, in your opinion, we should change the code, that's just neutral, right?
Correct. In your opinion is a safe, completely neutral way to attribute a thought or strategy to a specific person. It's respectful. But in your wisdom is a linguistic weapon.
A weapon.
Yeah, it's entirely sarcastic. You only deploy this phrase when someone has made a decision that backfired spectacularly, and you want to highlight the massive gap between their perceived intelligence and the actual disaster they caused.
Ouch.
Yeah, you're essentially saying, you thought you were a genius, but look at the wreckage.
That is brutal. So if I'm confronting the lead developer who broke the new system we just drew up, I might say, in your wisdom, You altered our entire database tracking layout without checking if the code worked.
Exactly. And the theatrical delivery is really crucial there. You have to lean into the irony with your tone of voice. You stretch out the word wisdom. It's sharp, it's highly critical, and it leaves absolutely no doubt in the room that you think their decision was incredibly foolish.
Okay, so the developer made a terrible choice in his wisdom. The database crashes, and our disaster reaches its absolute peak. The phrase to describe the climax of this terrible sequence of events is cap it all,
Right.
meaning the final, often worst event that completes a series of problems. But if I'm listing a sequence of events, I usually just rely on words like lastly or finally. Why use cap it all?
Well, they occupy the same grammatical space in a sentence, but they have completely different narrative functions. Finally is utterly neutral.
Like, first I opened my laptop, then I checked my email, and finally I started the meeting.
Exactly, perfectly neutral. But to cap it all specifically implies the climax of an escalating chain of misery. It is the cherry on top of a very bad cake. It basically translates to, as if things weren't already perfectly awful, this final disaster happened.
It really sounds like a phrase designed for storytelling. So going back to our IELTS exam scenario, if you're asked to describe a disastrous day, you wouldn't want to use finally. You want the examiner to feel the pain.
Right, you want to build that tension.
So you could say, the database crashed, our power failed, and to cap it all, we lost the main backup drive completely.
Notice how that creates a narrative peak. The listener feels the compounding stress. You aren't just giving them a boring list of events, you're taking them on a journey to rock bottom.
And when a team hits rock bottom, the professional relationships inevitably start to fracture, right? People get stressed, they get defensive, and they start behaving badly.
They absolutely do.
Which brings us to the toxic side of professional dynamics. Our next phrase is take advantage of. The definition is to exploit someone or a situation for personal gain. But wait, I use this positively all the time.
Sure, we all do.
Like if a new employee starts, I tell them, you should really take advantage of the free certification courses or take advantage of our online resources.
And in that context, you're using it perfectly. What applied to resources, opportunities, tools, or, physical items, taking advantage of something is entirely positive. It just means utilizing what is available smartly and efficiently.
Okay, phew.
Yeah, the dark nuance, the toxicity, only appears when you apply it to people.
So it's a hard dividing line between objects and humans.
Yes, very hard line. When you take advantage of a person, it instantly shifts from smart utilization to manipulation. It means you're actively exploiting someone's kindness, their naivety, or their lack of experience strictly for your own benefit and usually to their detriment.
That is a critical distinction to master. Taking advantage of a resource makes you a smart employee. Taking advantage of a person makes you a corporate predator.
Exactly.
So if we're analyzing a toxic workplace, we might discuss how unscrupulous corporate firms will often try to take advantage of young, inexperienced interns by making them work, like 80 hours a week for no pay.
Precisely. It implies a moral failing on the part of the person doing the exploiting. And when someone finally realizes they're being taken advantage of, or when the team dynamics completely collapse after our hypothetical database disaster, you might see our final phrase in action, which is shut someone out.
Right. And this means to deliberately exclude someone from your life or a group. I've always wondered about the severity of this.
It's pretty severe.
Like, if the developer who broke the database in his wisdom is just annoying me and I just put my noise-canceling headphones on at my desk and ignore him, am I shutting him out?
No, that is just ignoring someone. Ignoring is a passive, often temporary state. You're simply choosing not to pay attention to a stimulus in that specific moment.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Shutting someone out is an active, deliberate, and sustained barrier. It is professional exile. You are building a wall. You're making a conscious strategic decision that this person will no longer have access to information, to discussions, or to the social fabric of the team.
It sounds incredibly punitive.
Yeah.
It's the aftermath of a major conflict where someone's completely removed from the inner circle.
Yes, exactly.
For instance, you could say, following that heated board meeting dispute, the executive committee completely chose to shut him out. Meaning, he doesn't get the internal emails anymore, his calendar invites disappear, and he's essentially a ghost in the office.
It's a highly visual phrase, Imagine standing in a hallway and having a heavy, solid oak door slammed directly in your face and then hearing the lock click. That is the figurative feeling of being shut out.
Wow, okay. We have covered some incredibly powerful terrain here, moving from the physical grind all the way to toxic corporate exile. And now, to ensure all of you listening have truly internalized the deep psychological nuances of these phrases, it's time for our interactive quiz.
Yes. We have 8 questions for you today to test your mastery.
All right, let's jump in. Here is question 1. Which sentence uses the idiomatic phrase "put your back in" correctly based on context?
Okay, your choices are: Option A, the medical rehabilitation specialist instructed the patient to physically put your back in alignment. Option B, the deeply frustrated young retail clerk aggressively managed to completely drop a white pin. Or Option C, moving that heavy industrial safe upstairs required everyone to truly put their backs in.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
And the correct answer is C. Moving that heavy industrial safe upstairs required everyone to truly put their backs in. Remember our discussion about the physical origins of the phrase? It's about exerting great physical effort and heavy lifting, not at all like medical alignment.
Spot on. Okay, moving to question 2. Select the context where the phrase "in your wisdom" is most appropriately used sarcastically.
All right, option A, in your wisdom, you altered our entire database tracking layout without checking if the code worked. Option B, the ancient Eastern philosophers compiled many exceptional structural text options filled in your wisdom. Or Option C, the incredibly clumsy warehouse inventory clerk accidentally managed to quickly buy some large system.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is A. In your wisdom, you altered our entire database tracking layout without checking if the code worked. As we explored earlier, this isn't about genuine intelligence. It's a sharp tool used specifically when someone's poor decision backfires and you really want to point out the irony.
Right, the sarcasm is heavy there.
Okay.
Question 3. In which situation does someone accurately utilize the phrasal verb "bog down" figuratively?
Is it Option A, the heavy construction vehicle operators accidentally drove into wetlands and got physically bogged down? Option B, our core quality assurance department became severely bogged down in endless minor spreadsheet details. Or Option C, the completely terrified young wilderness traveler unexpectedly noticed an exceptionally massive heavy wood chest.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct choice is B. Our core quality assurance department became severely bogged down in endless minor spreadsheet details. While Option A uses the phrase in its literal physical sense, sinking in mud, Option B uses it figuratively. It paints that vivid psychological picture of sinking into a swamp of paperwork.
Excellent. On to question 4. Which response best demonstrates the advanced phrase "cap it all" contextually?
Option A, the database crashed, our power failed, and to cap it all, we lost the main backup drive completely. Option B, the highly fashionable clothing outlet coordinator explicitly instructed models to wear that blue cap it all. Or Option C, the incredibly clumsy warehouse inventory clerk accidentally managed to quietly catch that white ball.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is A. The database crashed, our power failed, and to cap it all, we lost the main backup drive completely. It perfectly captures that narrative climax we talked about. It's the final, absolute worst event in a sequence of misery.
Right, much stronger than just saying "finally." Okay, question 5. How would a professional accurately use the phrasal verb "cry out for" figuratively?
Is it Option A, the small distressed child started to loudly cry out for assistance when she lost her mother? Option B, the completely confused amateur theater group unexpectedly decided to proudly paint a clean floor? Or Option C, our outdated manual teacher scheduling system genuinely cries out for complete digital automation?
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
It's Option C, our outdated manual teacher scheduling system genuinely cries out for complete digital automation. Option A describes a literal cry from a child. But Option C uses that anthropomorphism to give an abstract system a voice that's desperately demanding a solution.
Exactly. All right, question 6. Which scenario perfectly illustrates the meaning of the phrasal verb "draw up" figuratively?
Okay, Option A, the competitive art student sat near the window to beautifully draw up individual sketch items. Option B, the operational management team scheduled an afternoon session to draw up the new translation guidelines. Or Option C, the incredibly clumsy hotel maintenance worker accidentally managed to completely drop that red cup.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is B. The operational management team scheduled an afternoon session to draw up the new translation guidelines. It isn't about literally drawing a sketch with a pencil, it's about architecture. It means preparing, structuring, and formalizing a plan with professional weight.
Almost done. Question 7. Which sentence accurately utilizes the phrase take advantage of in an unfair or exploitative sense?
Let's see. Option A, unscrupulous corporate firms will often try to take advantage of young, inexperienced interns. Option B, to improve your technical proficiency, you should always take advantage of free online resources. Or option C, the deeply confused young kitchen assistant accidentally managed to quickly slice a fresh plant.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is A. Unscrupulous corporate firms will often try to take advantage of young, inexperienced interns. Option B is the positive use we discussed, smartly utilizing a tool. But option A crosses that hard dividing line into toxic territory, highlighting the exploitation of people.
And finally, question 8. Which of the following statements correctly uses shut someone out, figuratively?
Is it option A, the office security guards carefully close the heavy metal security gates to physically shut everyone out? Option B, following that heated board meeting dispute, the executive committee completely chose to shut him out. Or option C, the completely confused amateur artist unexpectedly managed to beautifully paint a giant yellow sprout.
Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is B. Following that heated board meeting dispute, the executive committee completely chose to shut him out. Rather than a physical gate closing, it represents that deliberate, active, and sustained emotional and professional exclusion. It's the figurative slamming of the door.
Excellent work if you were able to identify those. Mastering these phrases really requires moving beyond just rote memorization and truly understanding their deep, often hidden psychological context.
It really does. It takes a lot of practice.
So what does this all mean for you as an advanced English speaker? It's one thing to be able to pass a vocabulary test, but it's another entirely to wield these phrases effectively in real life. I want you to mull this over. How does mastering the subtle nuances of these phrases, knowing the exact line between neutral and sarcastic, fundamentally change the power dynamics in a professional conversation?
Oh, it's a profound, almost invisible shift in authority. When you can express the exact emotional weight of an overwhelming delay by saying you are bogged down, or strategically deploy cutting sarcasm with in your wisdom, you aren't just participating in a meeting anymore. You are actively controlling the narrative architecture of the room.
Could using the right phrase with the precise level of formality, emotion, or tension at the exact right moment be the key to finally coming of age in your career? Think about that the next time you step into a boardroom or an exam. Because when you command the nuances of the language, you command the room.
Well said.
Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep finding the perfect words to paint your picture.